I was 45 at the time, very, very busy, always very busy, workaholic, and thought I was healthy, athletic, outgoing, busy, felt good. And I had a lump in my breast that got larger and larger, and I'd had a lot of benign cysts. So I didn't really take it too seriously for quite a long time. And then I started realizing there was something more to this, but I didn't want to deal with it. I didn't have time to deal with it. So I waited and waited way too long. And finally I got into the doctor for a mammogram, and it was a whirlwind from there on. Was scheduled for a lumpectomy right away. So once I went into the hospital, did the lumpectomy, I was told I had aggressive cancer, and that if I didn't do everything that they recommended, which was aggressive chemo, radiation, more surgery, then I would probably not live more than 3 or 6 months. So there wasn't this medium that there is today where people are informed and people have a lot more access to information and education. I was pretty much an isolated island. There was no internet. You hear that information and you have one resource, the doctor. So hearing I had cancer, fortunately I was married to a guy who had been the only survivor of an airplane crash and was told he'd never walk again. And he learned how to study, research, think right, do the right things to get well. He was partnering with me to say, we can do this. We can figure this out. Well, let's learn what cancer is. Let's learn how you got it. Let's learn how we can defeat it. I was really blessed. So once I had this diagnosis and I was scheduled for a lumpectomy and told it was so bad, I was immediately scheduled for another surgery where they were going to do radical mastectomy and then put me into chemo. I immediately started researching with my husband at the library. We spent hours every day at the library learning what we could from journals and from books and articles and everything we could find. So we were searching, and the more we learned, the more shocked we were about what we were learning. We were learning what cancer is, abnormal cells that are growing faster than our body can get rid of them. What causes those to form? Dehydration is a serious one. Lack of nutrients, lack of oxygen in the cells, stress changes the DNA of the cells. There's so many toxins we're exposed to, and the lack of sleep. I was a classic case waiting for cancer. I had no idea. I thought people got zapped with cancer. It was just an unlucky draw that I was going to get cancer. It's so predictable. That was one of the things that was beginning to uncover itself, but I was still early in my research. So in no time, I was back in the hospital with another surgery, but I had set up a reconstructive surgeon. I was going to have to do a double mastectomy. I had checked and called a lot of women who had had cancer before me, breast cancer. And I had talked to these women and said, what do you like that you did? What do you wish you'd have done different? What would you change if you could do it over again? So I was trying to gather a lot of information, so I knew I had one chance to make the right choices. So in talking to these women, I was really being educated on things they wish they'd have done different, things they were glad they did. Of these 5 women who were ahead of me in the game of breast cancer, they were all still alive. Most of them were considered in remission at this point. So based on all that information, I decided, okay, I'm going to do a double mastectomy and then reconstructive surgery and get this thing behind me, thinking still that that's what would do the trick. So I'm back in the hospital. The reconstructive surgeon is there. My surgeon's there. I'm going through the typical process that the medical system puts you on. I have to insert here that faith is a big part of my life. I believe in God. I believe in the Bible. I can't tell my story without including that because that was the guiding force in my journey. And before I got in for the second surgery, I was really praying, God, you have a plan for me. I believe that you want me well, because that's what your word teaches. I believe you want to see me get through this victoriously, because that's what your word says. And I trust you. It's a relationship, not a religion. And so I really did have confidence in him guiding me to what I needed, whatever that would be. In the beginning, I assumed he'd use the doctors and the medical system to do that. But while I was reading my Bible, after praying and praying, I was reading and this particular scripture just jumped off the page at me. And it was 1 Corinthians 10:13. It's kind of become my signature verse. in regards to cancer because it was the scripture God gave me. And it said, I will not tempt you beyond that which you're able to endure without making a way of escape. I went, great. He has a way of escape for me. Now, what is it? I have to find it because it's out there. So I started looking more diligently, looking what is the way he wants me to go through this process to victory. So I was still assuming it was the doctors, but I'm back in the hospital now and I'm in the second surgery. They're going to do all this radical mastectomy and reconstruction. And next thing I know, I'm being slapped on the face and told to wake up and the surgery's been aborted. I had a really bad staph infection from the lumpectomy. So now I'm on hold for 30 days. And now I have to be on antibiotics and wait. And of course, I had the mindset back then that, oh no, cancer's growing in my body. I can't get it out. I have 30 days to sit and let this grow. Well, now I realize it's been growing for 2 years or more, probably. And that isn't an issue. And I was thinking incorrectly because that's not what the problem was. So during that 30 days, I thought, God, what are you doing? You're messing with my plan here and you aren't showing me my way out. And little did I know that was such a blessing that I had that 30-day hiatus to do more research. So during that 30 days, I learned so much more about cancer. I finally realized I'd given it to myself. I wasn't zapped like a lightning bolt. I had given it to myself. I was a perfect candidate. I drank caffeinated beverages, tons of coffee, Cokes, sugar, dehydrated, very little sleep, worked all the time, super stressed, didn't know how to handle stress. I had all the classic symptoms. I ate food in the microwave, fast food because I was on the go all the time. I didn't have a clue how to avoid cancer. And after I learned, I realized I had given it to myself. The beauty of that was that I figured, wow, if I gave it to myself, I can reverse it myself. So learning why I got it and changing all those behaviors and all that approach to life was my secret. It was my way of escape. During that time, my mother saw this medical doctor on a TV program that was sharing about having breast cancer. She was a medical surgeon. She had been in San Francisco General. He was describing this approach that she took. She decided not to go the medical route, even though she was in the system, and ended up finding an alternate path to heal herself of aggressive breast cancer. When my mother saw this doctor, she sent me all the information immediately. When I watched, back then, it was a VHS tape I stuck in the machine. When I watched that tape, it was like the scripture that had jumped off the page for me. I knew it. That was my way of escape. This is what I'm going to do. This was my way of escape. So I was so excited. That was my single moment that I knew I had found the way of escape. Now, my husband, being the man he is, tried to track this doctor down. He made calls. He did so much research. Finally found a phone number, called her. And the person that answered the phone said, no, she doesn't see patients. No, she doesn't talk to patients. No, you cannot talk to her. No, no, no. He called and he called and he called with a story every time trying to get through to her. And finally, she talked to him and agreed to meet with us. And we found out she was 10 minutes away from where we live. So she met me and my husband and my mother-in-law at her office where I worked. And I gave her all my medical reports. I talked to her and she was the one that pulled it all together for me. She told me how sick I was, but she explained that cancer is a systemic disease. It is all through my body. It's not the tumor. The tumor isn't cancer. It's just a symptom of cancer. We spent 4 hours together. Bless her heart, she just gave that to me and changed my life because I was committed to the path that I then took to follow her lead. And I still didn't know a lot or understand a lot of the details. I still had so much to learn, but I just did what she did. I did exactly what she told me, and I got well. It took about 12 months. I was so diligent. I did carrot juice all day long. I took green barley. I drank good pure water. I got plenty of sleep. So I was doing all the right things for my body. I did some steamed vegetables, some cooked soups, but they were all natural. I was very careful. I got worse before I got better, though. I got sicker. I could barely walk. I got so much worse. And now I realize, being educated, that a lot of that was probably the cancer cells dying in my body. The lymph nodes under my left arm were swollen, very painful. I had a lump that developed on my arm that was hard, and I didn't know what it was. I assumed it was a tumor. My abdomen was getting so sore. I was in so much pain internally, I could barely walk. I had to lean on my husband, but I tried to walk every day to keep exercising, but I was barely able to walk. So I was feeling horrible. I was feeling worse. I now understand that the cancer cells were dying. They're very toxic, and they were making me sicker. And it's when you heal naturally, it takes time. It's not like a drug that creates a reaction. It's slower, it's more root-based. You're really changing things at the root level, but it takes time, and you have to stay with the plan. I was committed to the plan because I felt like God had directed me to it. So I didn't question the plan. And that was my biggest benefit because I wasn't looking back. It was probably about 6 months before I was feeling better, feeling good again, looking better. Your whole body transforms. And I stayed on that plan for about 12 months total. And by the end of that, I felt better than I'd ever felt. I just felt great. So 18 months after I was diagnosed, I went back in and had a full body scan. And of course, there was not a trace of any cancer in my body. An interesting note, even though I never saw my doctor again, because I canceled everything, never went back. Kept getting letters, come back in, never went back. He ran into my mother-in-law, who he had met about a year later in the hospital because she was volunteering in that same hospital. And he didn't know if I was dead or alive. And he said, "How's Paula? Is she still alive? Is she doing okay?" And my mother-in-law, of course, they said, "Oh, she's doing great. She's completely well. She's just doing great." And the doctor said, "Tell her she did the right thing," which was huge for him to admit that and support my path, because I had a lot of conversations with him about why I was doing what I was doing. But interesting also, the 5 women that I talked to that I had gained so much from, all of them died. They died of cancer. They all got it back again. One of them was brain, another one was lungs. And I mean, they all had it come back and they all died, but they were all going the medical system way. And how tragic that was for me to keep hearing one after another was dying because of cancer. It only reinforced my decision to go the direction that I went. I knew it was still a risk, but it was less of a risk by far than the risk of the medical system. That was another real reinforcement that I had chosen correctly.